AITA for cutting off my parents after they rejected my son but still took my money? I'm Catherine, 36, and for most of my life, I was the oldest daughter everyone called strong. Whenever they needed me to stay quiet and handle something on my own. I'm also Miles's mom. He's 8, and he's the kind of kid who saves the last waffle for me because he thinks adults get too busy and forget to eat. In my family, strong usually meant easy to ignore. My younger sister, Sophie, is 17. There's a 19-year age gap between us, which means I was already living my own adult life by the time she started school. My parents treated that difference like proof that Sophie needed endless patience while I needed endless discipline. When Sophie forgot an assignment, Dad said she was overwhelmed. When I forgot to return a library book at 16, he brought it up for years as evidence that I had always been careless. When Sophie changed her mind about the color of her bedroom walls 3 times, Mom laughed and called it creativity. When I once asked Mom to watch Miles for one afternoon so I could deal with an appointment, she sighed like I had requested a kidney. Dad's name is Thomas. He's 64 and has always had a way of saying cruel things in the voice of someone explaining a bank policy. He rarely yelled. He didn't need to. He would lean back, fold his arms, and tell you that whatever hurt you were feeling was simply the natural consequence of your own decisions. Mom Elaine is 62. She speaks softly, touches your wrist when she wants you to stop arguing, and says things like, "You know how your father is," as if his personality were a weather system none of us could challenge. For years, I told myself they were harder on me because they trusted me more. That explanation helped me swallow a lot. It helped me stay quiet when Dad praised Sophie for getting a B in a class I had once gotten an A in. It helped me smile when Mom posted pictures of Sophie's birthday decorations after forgetting to call Miles on his birthday until after dinner. It helped me send money when their homeowner's insurance jumped, when the water heater failed, when a utility bill was temporarily higher than expected, and when Dad said a pipe repair had put them in a difficult spot. I never announced any of it to the family. I didn't want applause. I didn't even want repayment most of the time. I told myself family help didn't need a spotlight. The first transfer had been small. Mom called one afternoon and said the electric bill had caught them off guard after a hot month. "Your father hates asking," she said. I sent the money. A few months later, Dad called about an insurance shortfall. Then there was an emergency plumbing invoice. Then a repair that required homeowner paperwork and a notarized signature, because the contractor was arranging a payment schedule. Eventually, some of the support became automatic. I covered part of one utility bill every month and sent additional money when something unexpected happened. Mom always asked me not to mention it. "Your father is proud," she would say. Once she added, "And don't bring it up around Sophie. She'll feel guilty." I agreed because I didn't want my teenage sister worrying about adult finances. I thought I was protecting her. I didn't understand that I was also helping my parents build a version of the family where they could take from me privately and criticize me publicly. The housing problem started with a smell. It was faint at first, a damp, sour odor near the wall outside Miles's room. I reported it to management. Someone came by, looked around for 10 minutes, and said it was probably old carpet. 3 days later, the baseboard had swollen. Then part of the drywall softened under my thumb. I sent pictures. I called again. A maintenance worker finally opened the wall and found a slow leak that had been feeding moisture into the room for longer than anyone knew. There was visible mold behind the drywall, and the repair would involve opening more of the wall, removing flooring, and treating the area. The notice came by email and was also taped to the door. We needed to leave temporarily while they completed remediation and inspection. The management company said their insurance representative was reviewing temporary housing coverage. Their representative said they were waiting on documentation from management. Every call ended with someone promising an update in 48 hours. Meanwhile, I had an 8-year-old who needed a safe place to sleep. I paid for a motel room for 3 nights and tried not to let Miles see how worried I was. The room had 2 beds, a rattling air conditioner, and a bathroom fan that sounded like a lawn mower. Miles treated it like an adventure the first night. He lined up his little plastic dinosaurs on the windowsill and asked if we could have cereal in bed. The second night, he slept with his backpack beside him. When I asked why, he shrugged. "So we can go fast if we have to leave." The next afternoon, I sat in the school pickup line with the motel receipt folded in my purse and smiled when he climbed into the car. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's handled," I said. It wasn't handled. I had called 2 short-term rental places, 3 extended-stay hotels, and a friend who was already hosting her brother's family. The affordable options had waiting lists. The available options would drain my savings before the insurance companies finished deciding who was responsible. I waited until Miles was eating crackers in the back seat, then called Mom. She answered on the 4th ring. "Catherine, is everything all right?" "No," I said. "The leak is worse than they thought. We have to be out until the place passes inspection." "Oh, honey." That was Mom's favorite opening when she was preparing to offer sympathy instead of help. "I'm not asking for money," I said. "I just need somewhere safe for Miles to sleep for a few weeks. Maybe less. I'm waiting on the insurance decision." There was a pause. I could hear cabinets closing on her end. "How many weeks?" "I don't know yet. I'll keep looking for other options. I can bring groceries. I'll cover anything extra. We can sleep on an air mattress if we have to." Another pause. "Why don't you come over for dinner?" she said. "We can talk calmly." The word calmly bothered me. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't accused anyone of anything. But in my family, calm usually meant I was expected to accept whatever Dad decided without making the evening uncomfortable. Still, I said yes. I picked up our things from the motel and put most of them in the trunk. Miles brought his backpack inside because he had started carrying it everywhere. My parents' hallway looked almost exactly the way it had when I was a teenager. Same framed family photos. Same wooden table near the door. Same picture of Sophie at age 10 in the center, larger than the rest. There were pictures of me too, but most were old enough that Miles wasn't in them. Mom hugged him first. "There's my sweet boy," she said. Miles hugged her back but kept one hand on his backpack strap. Dad was in the kitchen slicing meat. He looked up, nodded once and said, "Dinner's almost ready." Sophie came downstairs wearing an oversized sweatshirt and holding her phone. "Why do you have luggage?" she asked. "Because of the repair," I said. Mom quickly said, "We're going to discuss it." Sophie's eyes moved from me to Miles. "Oh." It was not a welcoming sound. Before dinner, Miles asked where the bathroom was, even though he had been there before. I walked him down the hall, and that was when I saw the rooms. The first had once been the guest room. Now it was Sophie's study. There was a white desk against the wall, 2 decorative shelves, a small reading chair, and a corkboard with 3 photos pinned to it. No bed. No books open. No sign anyone had studied there recently. Across from it was the room Mom used to call the sewing room. It now had a lighted vanity mirror, clear makeup drawers, a ring light, and a clothing rack holding what looked like seasonal outfits. The third room, the smallest one, was Sophie's creative space. Plastic bins were stacked along one wall. Half-used craft kits covered a folding table. Several unopened art supply packages sat on the floor. There was room for unopened craft kits, but apparently, the family needed a formal meeting to decide if there was room for an 8-year-old with a backpack. I also noticed something else. The shelves in the study looked familiar. So did the vanity mirror. I had seen them before, not in person but on invoices. The thought came and went so quickly that I almost dismissed it. At dinner, Dad sat at the head of the table. Mom had made chicken, potatoes, and green beans. Sophie ate while scrolling with one hand until Dad told her to put the phone away. For a few minutes, no one mentioned why we were there. Miles told Mom about a class project. Sophie interrupted to complain that one of her teachers had assigned too much reading. Dad told her he would email the school if the workload was unreasonable. I looked at him across the table and remembered being 14, sick with a fever, and still being told that deadlines didn't care how I felt. When the plates were mostly empty, Dad set down his fork. "Your mother explained the situation." "I explained part of it," Mom said quietly. Dad ignored her. "This is exactly why people need emergency plans." "I had one," I said. "The repair is taking longer than expected, and the insurance companies are delaying coverage. An emergency plan that depends on insurance moving quickly is not a plan. I'm not asking for a financial lecture. I'm asking if Miles and I can stay here temporarily. Dad wiped his mouth with a napkin. The house is full. I looked toward the hallway. No, it isn't. Sophie shifted in her chair. Dad's expression hardened by half an inch. With him, that was enough. Those rooms are in use. One has a desk. One has makeup. One has craft bins. They are Sophie's spaces. I am asking for a few weeks, not a lifetime. Mom reached for her water. Your father means this is not a good time. What would make it a good time? I asked. A different emergency? Catherine, Mom said, warning me with my own name. I kept my voice even. We don't need a bedroom. Miles can sleep on an air mattress in the living room. I can sleep in the laundry area if that makes everyone more comfortable. Dad gave a short, humorless laugh. This house is not a waiting room for your bad decisions. Miles stopped chewing. I saw it immediately. His shoulders drew inward. He looked down at his plate. The leak was not my decision, I said. The point is that life does not rearrange itself every time you become uncomfortable. You don't learn responsibility by being rescued. I'm not asking you to rescue me. You're asking us to disrupt the household because you failed to prepare. Sophie pushed her potatoes around with her fork. I have exams coming up, she said. And I use those rooms. All 3 of them? I asked. Her face tightened. I can't give up my space every time your life gets messy. Mom sighed softly, as if Sophie and I were equally responsible for the tension. Sophie, that isn't helpful. It was the mildest possible correction, delivered in the tone someone might use to comment on table manners. I looked at Dad. What about the old laundry area? There's enough floor space for a mattress. No. The living room? No. The basement? No. Then say what you actually mean. Dad leaned back. What I mean is that Miles needs stability, and constantly cushioning you from consequences will not give him that. He needs to learn that the world does not rearrange itself because his mother made poor choices. He is 8, Dad. He is not a consequence. I did not say he was. You're talking about him like he's a lesson. Dad glanced at Miles, then back at me. He is a problem nobody here signed up for. For a second, nothing moved. Mom's fork clicked against her plate. Sophie stared at Dad but said nothing. Miles gripped both straps of his backpack. The anger that came over me was so clean it almost felt cold. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I pushed my chair back and stood. We're leaving. Mom rose halfway. Catherine, your father means. I know exactly what he means. Dad's jaw tightened. Do not create a scene. You already did. I held out my hand to Miles. He took it immediately. Mom followed us into the hallway. Please don't make this uglier than it has to be, she whispered. I stopped near the family photos. Your husband called your grandson a problem. He chose the wrong words. No. He chose honest words. Mom looked toward the dining room, not at me. You know he cares about Miles. Then he can explain what care looks like from across a locked door. I walked out before she could touch my wrist. Miles didn't speak until we were back in the car. I started the engine, turned on the air, and stared through the windshield because I needed a few seconds before I trusted my voice. He sat very still beside me. Mom. Yeah, baby. Did I do something wrong? I turned toward him. No. Grandpa said I'm a problem. He was wrong. Are they mad at me? No. Grown-ups did something wrong, and they are trying to make it sound like you caused it. He looked down at his backpack. I can be quiet if that helps. That nearly broke me. I reached across the console and pulled him close. You do not have to disappear to make adults comfortable. He pressed his face into my shoulder. After a moment he whispered, Can I sleep in the car if the motel costs too much? No, I said. You're sleeping in a bed. I will handle the rest. I drove us back to the motel. That night, Miles fell asleep with one hand on his backpack. I sat at the little desk by the window with my laptop open and the motel receipt beside me. At first, I wasn't looking for proof of anything. I was trying to figure out how long I could keep paying for the room before I needed to move money from savings. Then I remembered the shelves. Months earlier, Dad had sent me a repair invoice and said the plumbing work had cost more than expected. The invoice included additional line items from the same contractor's supply account. I had asked about them. Materials, Dad said. I had been busy and tired. I transferred the money. Now I open my bank records. I searched Thomas. Then Elaine. There were more transfers than I remembered. 200 here. 400 there. A larger payment toward the insurance shortfall. Half of an emergency repair bill. Recurring help with utilities. A payment tied to the notarized repair arrangement. I started making a timeline. The dates bothered me. One transfer for pipe repair overflow had been sent 3 days before Sophie posted photos of her refreshed study. New shelves. New rug. Fresh paint. Another payment Mom described as help with an electric bill came the same week Sophie posted a short video in front of the new vanity lights. I searched my messages. Mom. The insurance increase hit us at a terrible time. Anything helps. Dad. Contractor needs the balance by Friday. Mom. Please don't mention it around Sophie. She'll feel guilty. I scrolled farther. There was a photo Mom had sent of a receipt because she said she wanted me to know where the money went. The top half showed plumbing materials. The bottom half, partly folded under, listed shelving hardware and lighting equipment. I opened the original repair invoice from my email. The contractor had grouped several purchases under one account. Some were necessary repairs. Others were clearly not. Decorative shelving. Wall paint. Electrical work for added vanity lighting. Storage fixtures. Dad hadn't used every dollar I sent on Sophie's rooms. Some of it had covered real household expenses. That almost made it worse. It meant the lie was built carefully enough to sound true. They had used my money to stabilize the house, free up their own funds, and complete upgrades for Sophie. Then when Miles and I needed temporary shelter, they protected those upgraded spaces from us. They didn't just refuse us room. They used my money to build the room they then denied us. I sat there for a long time while the air conditioner rattled. Every receipt felt like another door locking from the inside. My first impulse was to call Dad and demand an explanation. I could already hear how it would go. Money is fungible, Catherine. You offered to help. No one forced you. This is about your attitude, not the rooms. I didn't call. Instead, I downloaded every statement. I saved the transfers. I took screenshots of Mom's messages. I found Sophie's public post showing the room upgrades and noted the dates. Then I logged into the accounts where I had set up recurring payments. I removed my bank information from the utility payment. I canceled the monthly transfer to Mom. I stopped the automatic amount that had been helping with the insurance premium. For one payment, the website asked if I was sure. Clicked yes. Then I wrote one email to both of them. Since there is no room for us in your life, there is no room for my money in your budget. I have canceled the recurring payments I was covering. Do not contact me about bills. If you want any relationship with Miles, the first conversation starts with a direct apology to him. I read it twice. Then I sent it. Dad called 7 minutes later. I let it ring. Mom called after him. I let that ring too. Dad left the first voicemail. You are reacting emotionally and making a financial decision you will regret. Helping family does not buy you authority over this house. Call me when you are prepared to have an adult conversation. Mom's voicemail came next. Catherine, honey, I know you are hurt, but canceling everything without warning is extreme. Your father should not have said what he said. Please don't turn one bad dinner into something the whole family has to hear about. One bad dinner. Not years of taking my help. Not 3 rooms. Not Miles asking if he needed to sleep in a car. One bad dinner. The next morning, Dad left a colder message. You always did have a talent for making yourself the victim. I saved all 3. I also called the management office again, pushed for written confirmation of the repair timeline, and contacted the insurance representative directly. I found an extended stay place that was more expensive than I wanted but safe, clean, and close enough that Miles could keep his regular routine. I paid for a week. I did not ask my parents again. 2 days later, Mom sent a text. The electric payment did not go through. Was that intentional? I stared at it for a moment, then typed, "Yes." She replied almost immediately, "We need to discuss this." I wrote, "No, you need to adjust your budget." Dad began working on the family before the weekend. My Aunt Claire called Saturday morning. Claire is 45 and usually considers herself neutral. In practice, that often means she asks the person being mistreated to compromise because that person is less likely to cause a scene. "I heard there was a disagreement," she said. "That is one word for it. Your dad says you asked them to rearrange the house with no clear end date. I asked for a few weeks while repairs were completed. He said you became angry when they said no. I became angry when he called Miles a problem nobody signed up for." Claire went quiet. "He said that?" "Yes." "Well, that was awful. But maybe he meant the situation." "He looked at my son when he said it." She exhaled. "I'm not defending that. I'm just saying Sophie is still young, and I know she uses those rooms. It would be a shame for the family to split over space." "Claire, this was never just about a room." "Then what is it about?" I looked at the printed statement spread across the motel desk. "Ask Dad how much of that house I have been paying for." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean you have one side of the story. Before you call me again, get the other side from someone who is willing to show receipts." I ended the call. That afternoon, Dad sent a family email. He included Claire, several cousins, two in-laws, Mom, and me. The subject line was "Family matters should stay in the family." The email said he was saddened that I had chosen to punish my parents financially after they set a reasonable boundary. He said they loved Miles, but they could not enable instability. He wrote that I had always been independent and that he was disappointed to see me use a child to pressure elderly parents. My parents were not helpless. They were healthy, active, and perfectly capable of reviewing their own spending. Dad called himself elderly only when he wanted sympathy. Two relatives replied with variations of, "Hope everyone can work this out." One cousin wrote privately to me that I should take a breath before doing permanent damage. I did not answer the thread. Instead, I printed it. I printed the bank statements and highlighted dates. I printed the transfer confirmations. I printed the repair invoices. I printed Mom's message asking me not to tell Sophie. I printed a transcript of Dad's voicemail accusing me of buying authority. I put the motel receipt on top. I did not use a thick binder or create some theatrical presentation. It was a thin stack of ordinary paper. That was enough. The Sunday potluck had been planned weeks earlier at Claire's house. I had considered skipping it. Miles was supposed to come, but after the dinner at my parents' house, I arranged for him to spend the afternoon with a friend and her son. He did not need to watch adults debate whether he deserved dignity. I went alone. The backyard was full of folding chairs, paper plates, bowls covered in plastic wrap, and sweating pitchers of iced tea. Someone had brought baked beans. Someone else was arguing about the grill temperature. Cousins who had already read Dad's email gave me careful smiles. Mom was arranging napkins. Dad stood near the grill talking to two relatives in a low voice. When he saw me, he looked surprised, then pleased in a way that told me he believed my presence meant surrender. Sophie sat at a patio table with her phone. Claire approached me first. "I'm glad you came." I said I would. She glanced at the papers in my hand. "What's that?" The rest of the story. Her expression tightened. "Catherine, maybe today is not the time." Dad chose the time when he emailed everyone. Before she could answer, Mom joined us. "Can we talk inside?" "No." "Catherine, please." "Did Dad tell everyone he called Miles a problem?" Mom's face changed. "Not here." "That means no." She lowered her voice. "Please do not make this uglier." I looked at her. "You keep using that word for the truth." Dad called everyone to eat before she could respond. For 20 minutes, the family performed normalcy. People passed rolls. Ice clinked in cups. Someone asked Sophie about school. Dad spoke loudly about a home repair he might need to postpone because some unexpected expenses had changed. It was not subtle. Claire gave me a warning look. I kept eating. Then one of my uncles asked if the repairs at my place were moving forward. They are, I said. Miles and I have temporary housing. Dad shook his head. That is what she should have arranged from the beginning. The table went quiet in small sections. I set down my fork. Mom said, Thomas. He continued. I raised my daughters to be responsible. One of them remembered it. Sophie looked at her plate. Claire said, maybe we should change the subject. Dad smiled like the reasonable man in the room. I would be happy to. I only want everyone to understand that setting a boundary is not cruelty. I did not raise Catherine to expect rescue whenever life becomes inconvenient. I looked around the table. Several relatives avoided my eyes. Dad had the room exactly where he wanted it, uncomfortable enough to believe him, but too polite to challenge him. Then he said, I raised Catherine to be independent. I didn't raise her to use her child as a bargaining chip. That was the moment he lost control of the story. I stood and placed the stack of papers on the table. You all heard that I asked for too much, I said. Now you can see what I gave. Dad's face went still. Mom whispered, Catherine, don't. I slid the first page toward Claire. It showed the recurring utility payments. The next showed transfers to Mom and Dad over several years. The next was the repair invoice with the room upgrade items highlighted. Then the dates of Sophie's posts. Then Mom's text. Please don't mention it to Sophie. She'll feel guilty. No one spoke for several seconds. The only sound was a paper plate shifting against the table. Claire read the top pages, then looked at Dad. She was paying your utilities? Helping occasionally, he said. Every month is not occasionally. Dad's voice sharpened. This is private financial information. You made it public when you told everyone I cut you off because I was told no, I said. He pointed at the papers. Money does not buy the right to disrespect your parents. I'm not buying respect. I'm returning the bill for every time you called neglect a lesson. Mom stood. Some of that money went to necessary repairs. I know. I highlighted those too. I pulled one page free. This transfer covered part of the plumbing bill. This one helped with insurance. This one paid utilities. And these purchases were made through the same accounts while you told me every dollar was needed to keep the house stable. Sophie leaned forward. What purchases? Dad said. This does not concern you. It concerns me if she's blaming me. I am not blaming you for taking what your parents gave you, I said. I am blaming the adults who taught you that your comfort mattered more than my child's safety. Her face reddened. So now I'm the villain because I have rooms? No. You're blaming me because your life fell apart. My life did not fall apart. My wall opened up, and I needed temporary housing. Those are different things. I didn't ask you to pay for anything. I know. You were a child. Mom and Dad asked. They told me the money was for urgent household expenses. Then they used part of it to create private spaces for you, and told my son there was nowhere he could sleep. Sophie looked at Mom. Did she pay for my vanity? Mom's mouth opened, but no answer came out. Dad said, we paid for this house. Aunt Beatrice had been silent until then. She was 70, older than Dad, and one of the few relatives who had known that I helped occasionally. I did not know how much she knew. She placed her iced tea down. Thomas, did you use Catherine's money for those rooms? Dad looked at her. That is an oversimplification. It is a yes or no question. Household money is household money. Beatrice nodded slowly. So yes. Dad's face darkened. You are taking her side without understanding the arrangement. I understand more than you think, Beatrice said. I told you 2 years ago not to keep taking money from that girl while talking about her like she was an outsider. Every head turned toward Dad. Mom sat down. I looked at Beatrice. You knew. Not all of it, she said. I knew about the insurance help in one repair. Your father told me you insisted. Dad cut in. She did insist. I offered after Mom called me, I said. Beatrice looked at him again. And I warned you, I said. Do not take from Catherine and then act like she owes you gratitude for being allowed in the family. You laughed because you said she would never embarrass the family by talking about money. The silence after that was different. Before, people had been confused. Now they understood. Dad did not deny it. He looked at me with open anger. You planned this. I documented it. You came here intending to humiliate us. You emailed these people first. I was trying to stop rumors. You started the rumor. Claire turned to me. You paid for a motel while still paying part of their utilities? Yes. Her face fell. I didn't know. You didn't ask. That landed harder than I expected. Claire looked down. Mom reached toward the papers. Can we put these away and talk privately? No. Catherine, enough people have seen them. That was the point. Dad pushed his chair back. So what do you want? Applause? Repayment? Permission to control how we use our own home? I want 3 things. He crossed his arms. Of course you do. No more money from me. No access to Miles unless you apologize directly to him without excuses. And no more lies to relatives. If you tell another false version of this, I send the complete timeline to everyone you told. Mom's eyes filled, but she did not cry. You would keep us from our grandson? You kept him from a safe room and called him a burden. Your father used the word problem. Do not polish it. Dad said, I will not be blackmailed into apologizing. It is not blackmail. You are free to refuse. You just will not see him. You cannot erase family because you are angry. I am not erasing family. I am ending access without accountability. He looked around the table for support. No one gave it. Some relatives stared at their plates. One cousin picked up a statement and read it twice. An in-law who had replied to Dad's email quietly moved the papers closer so his wife could see. Dad was used to silence meaning agreement. That day it meant he had lost the room. Sophie stood so quickly her chair scraped the patio. This is insane. Mom reached for her. Sophie. No. She comes here with receipts and makes everyone look at me like I stole from her. I do not think you stole from me, I said. That's what you're saying. I'm saying your parents built a system where you never had to see what anyone else gave up. She looked at Dad. Are you going to let her talk to me like that? For the first time, Dad had no answer that restored the old order. Sophie walked into the house and slammed the door. Mom flinched. There, she said to me. Now she's hurt too. I looked at her. You are still protecting the person with 3 rooms. Mom pressed her lips together. Beatrice kept 1 copy of the timeline. Claire asked for another. Dad said, those papers stay here. No. They involve our finances. They involve mine. I placed them back in my bag. Then I looked at Mom. You knew where the money was going. She shook her head weakly. Not every detail. You knew enough to ask me not to tell Sophie. I did not want her to feel guilty. You were comfortable letting me feel used as long as she stayed comfortable. That is not fair. It is exact. I left before the meal ended. No one followed me. The first apology came from Claire that evening. She called and said, I was wrong. I let the silence sit for a moment. I should have asked you what happened before telling you to compromise, she continued. I thought I was helping keep the family together. You were helping keep the story together. I know. It was not a perfect apology, but it was direct. I accepted it without pretending everything was fixed. 2 cousins sent private messages. One said she had believed Dad because he sounded calm. The other admitted she had always assumed I rarely helped because Dad described me as distant. A few relatives said nothing at all. That was fine. Silence was more honest than another lecture about forgiveness. Dad sent no apology. He sent an email demanding that I restore the utility payment until they could restructure household finances. I replied, no. He sent another message saying my financial support had been voluntary and therefore could not be withdrawn as punishment. I replied, voluntary support can be ended voluntarily. Mom called from a number I did not recognize after I stopped answering hers. I picked up because I thought it might be related to the repair. Her voice was soft. The insurance payment is due. I know. We need more time. You had more time. You had years. This affects the house. Yes. Your father may have to delay repairs. Yes. She was quiet. Then she said, You sound cold. I am being clear. Can't we separate the money from what happened with Miles? No. You used my money in the same house you said had no space for him. That is not how we saw it. That is the problem. She tried a different approach. Sophie has been crying. I am sorry she is upset. She feels like the whole family blames her. I told everyone the adults were responsible. She may have to combine her rooms. I closed my eyes. Mom, listen to yourself. What? You are asking me to feel guilty because Sophie may have to use one room instead of 3 after your grandson asked if he should sleep in a car. She did not answer. I ended the call. The financial consequences were not dramatic or immediate. No one lost the house. No one was thrown into the street. Dad had simply built a budget that assumed my quiet help would continue forever. Without it, choices had to be made. The vanity room was the first thing to go. Sophie's makeup setup moved into her bedroom. The ring light was sold. The study became a usable guest room again after Dad realized an older relative might need it during an upcoming medical visit, and the family now knew it existed. The hobby supplies were boxed and consolidated. Mom canceled a few subscriptions. Dad postponed a non-essential landscaping project. They switched insurance plans after he spent weeks complaining that the better one was suddenly unaffordable. Discipline sounded different when Dad had to apply it to himself. Sophie blamed me at first. She sent one message. I hope you're happy. Everyone thinks I'm spoiled now. I replied. People are reacting to choices your parents made. You did not create the system, but you are old enough to decide whether you keep defending it. She did not answer. A month later, she sent another message late at night. Did you really pay the electric bill every month? Part of it, I wrote. For how long? Almost 3 years. She did not respond until morning. I didn't know. I believed her. Knowing did not erase the things she said at dinner, but I also understood that 17 years of being centered had trained her to experience any inconvenience as mistreatment. For the first time, someone had told Sophie no and had not apologized for it. Whether she learned from that was up to her. The repair at my place took longer than promised, but the insurance dispute was eventually resolved. By then I had decided I didn't want to return. The uncertainty had changed how the place felt, and Miles had started checking the wall every night. I found a different home for us. It was not perfect. The kitchen was smaller, and the living room carpet had an ugly pattern, but it was dry, safe, and ours. On the first night, we ate grilled cheese on the floor because the table had not arrived. Miles's backpack sat open near the door instead of zipped beside his bed. After dinner, he carried his dinosaurs into his new room and arranged them on the windowsill. Are we staying? He asked. Yes. For real? For real. He nodded as if he needed the answer stored somewhere deep. That night, he slept without the backpack beside him. Dad waited 6 weeks before attempting what he called an apology. He sent me a message asking to speak as adults. I agreed to a phone call after Miles was asleep. Dad began with, I am sorry you misunderstood my concern. I stopped him. That is not an apology. I am trying to explain the context. Miles does not need context. He needs you to say you were wrong. I was concerned about instability. You called him a problem. I was referring to the situation. You looked at him. Dad exhaled sharply. This is exactly what I mean. You take one sentence and build an entire case around it. No. I built the case around the sentence, the rooms, the money, the lies, and the email you sent to relatives. Are you going to hold this over us forever? I am going to hold the boundary until you take responsibility. I will not perform for a child. Then you will not see him. I ended the call. Mom tried twice to arrange a family dinner without addressing the apology. I declined both times. She sent birthday gifts for Miles. I let him keep them because they came without messages designed to make him responsible for her feelings. When she asked for photos, I sent one of him holding the gift and nothing more. Beatrice visited us once. She brought a pie and apologized for waiting so long to speak. I thought Thomas would eventually understand what he was doing, she said. He understood. She nodded. Yes, I suppose he did. Claire became more careful with me. She stopped asking me to be the bigger person. Once, when Mom complained to her that I was keeping the conflict alive, Claire told her, "No, Elaine. The conflict is alive because Thomas still has not apologized to an 8-year-old. Mom did not like that, but she heard it. As for the money, I never restored a single payment. I did send a written request asking for documentation on the specific repair funds that had been represented as urgent necessities. I did not expect full repayment, and I was not interested in turning my life into a lawsuit over family transfers. I wanted a record that I had challenged the false explanations." Dad replied that all funds had been used for household purposes. I wrote back, "Then household expenses are now your responsibility." That ended the exchange. The strangest part was how quickly my own life became quieter after I stopped managing theirs. I no longer received calls that began with, "Your father hates asking." I no longer opened my bank app to move money around before sending help. I no longer sat through family dinners waiting for the next comment about responsibility from a man whose bills I had partially covered. I had more money for Miles's savings, more patience in the evenings, and less anger hiding under my ribs. One afternoon, a voicemail from Dad appeared on my phone while Miles and I were unpacking books. I looked at the notification. Then I deleted it without listening. That did not feel dramatic. It felt ordinary. That was the piece I had been missing. Not a grand reconciliation, not a speech, not their approval. Just the right to decide which voices entered our home. Miles still asks about his grandparents sometimes. I answer honestly without giving him adult details. Grandpa said something hurtful and has not apologized yet. Is he still mad? Miles asked once. Maybe. Are you? Not the way I was. He thought about that. Can people be family and still not come over? Yes. He nodded and went back to building a cardboard fort in the living room. That question used to scare me because I thought boundaries meant I had failed to preserve the family. Now I understand that a family is not preserved by teaching one person to absorb every insult. My parents had spent years praising my independence whenever it saved them effort. They liked the version of me who never asked, never exposed, never stopped paying, and never made their comfort depend on how they treated my child. That version of me is gone. I do not regret exposing them at the potluck. Dad made the accusation public because he believed I would protect his reputation at the cost of my own. I corrected it in the same room where he tried to shame me. I do not regret cutting off the money. Support is not an entitlement, especially when it is accepted with one hand while the giver is pushed away with the other. And I will never regret walking Miles out of that house before he learned to make himself smaller for people who had already decided he took up too much space. I did not need my father to call me a good daughter. I needed my son to know he was worth protecting. They taught me to be independent so well that I finally became independent from them. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.